If you've ever wished you had a podcasting pro with nearly a decade of experience whispering growth secrets into your ear, that's exactly what you'll get when you tune into Podcast Growth Tools with me, your host, Kylie Chandler. This is the ultimate show for you if you're ready to grow your podcast audience, skyrocket engagement, and turn your show into a traffic-driving, list-building powerhouse. I've been in the podcasting world since 2015, helping creators like Amy Porterfield grow their shows to over 1 million downloads a month. My superpower? Breaking down proven podcast strategies and marketing techniques into step-by-step guidance you can actually implement without fluff, overwhelm, or guesswork. On this show, we're getting real about what actually moves the needle when it comes to growing your podcast audience and using it to boost your email list growth. From actionable insights and expert interviews to behind-the-scenes secrets, I'll help you turn your podcast into a traffic-driving, list-growing machine. Grab your earbuds, hit subscribe, and let's take your podcast to the next level. Hey, and welcome back to Podcast Growth Tools. Okay, so I have been speaking with so many female entrepreneurs / podcasters with online businesses, and I kind of keep hearing something that is bugging me a little bit. And so I had to tell you about it. I had to come on and I had to talk to you about this. So I keep hearing that these female entrepreneurs, these female podcasters say, my podcast is where I show up and serve, but it's not really where I sell. And I think to myself, okay, I love that you're serving. I love that you're using a podcast to consistently show up for your audience and consistently serve. But the fact that you're not using it to sell, I don't agree with. Now, I get it. I think for so long, there were so many affiliates and sponsors in podcasts that people just got, and there still are, let's be honest, that people, especially female entrepreneurs with an online brand, we just got burnt out and we saw our customers getting burnt out, right? And so we just started to let the podcast live as a nurture thing, which is great. And it should be, but we can take this step further. So I want you to hang out with me because here's the truth. Your podcast can be your actual number one lead generator that leads directly into your offers, meaning it can become a great way to grow your revenue. But you have to do something, okay? You have to change your mindset and you have to start treating it like it's a lead generator, like it's a driver for revenue, okay? So that's what we're going to talk about today. It's not really a tool or tactical, but it is a mindset shift. And I really, really want you to be here with me for this because it's so important. And honestly, it hurts my heart a little bit when I see entrepreneurs not using their podcast that way or thinking of it that way. Okay, so let's be honest. Many of us start out our podcast just out of love, right? We want to serve, inspire, teach. And I think that's incredible. I think there's also a piece of it's a great way to be a thought leader, right? And it is. I completely agree with that. But if you're also running a business, your podcast needs to do more than just entertain or educate or allow people to get to know you. It needs to be the needle mover in your business because podcasts take a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of resources, finances. We all know this, right? So we can't keep letting it just hang out as this really juicy way to nurture our audience. So when I work with entrepreneurs, one of the biggest shifts that I help them make is this. Stop treating your podcast like a siloed creative outlet and start treating it like a core piece of your business ecosystem. And this is actually something that I remember specifically I pitched when I was working with Amy. I was like, we have to start treating our podcast just like we do a product in our business. And ever since then, that's when things changed for her in the business when we worked together. But also that's when I tell that to other people, other podcasters, they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I never thought of that. Treat it just like a product and wonderful things will happen. Also, stop treating it like it's siloed. It should actually be a huge integrated part of your business, right? Because your podcast isn't just content. It's actually high converting real estate. It can warm people up. Yes. It builds deep trust. Yes. And it gets them primed to buy. Like I truly believe that as long as you're using it strategically. So here's a question I want to pose. So I want you to ask yourself this. What if every time I sat down to record, what if you ask yourself, how will this episode move my business forward? Like sit down and ask yourself, how will this episode move my business forward? Meaning, how is it going to set me up as a thought leader? How is it going to drive people to my email list, to my offers? How is it going to teach and give my audience exactly what they didn't even know they needed to hear? Okay. So when you start to ask yourself this and when you start to align your podcast with this flow and this question, things start to shift. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about when it comes to mindset is monetization. Because if you've been in my world for a while, you probably know that when I talk about monetization, I'm not necessarily talking about affiliates and sponsorships. I think there's a place for them. I think that has served podcasters really well. And I love that people are using it to get paid. The way that I really love to support my clients monetizing their podcast is driving everything back to their offers, everything back to whatever they have that drives revenue in their business. Okay, so I want to back up and just do a quick kind of myth check if I can. We do not need thousands and thousands of downloads or a fancy brand partnership to make money from our podcast. Like we don't. Sponsorships, like I said, they can be fun, but they're really supporting somebody else's business model, right? You have your own offers, you have your own programs, you have your own services. Let your podcast lead people to those things. When I work with my clients, we always set the podcast up as a top of funnel. And I have seen over and over and over again, this generates thousands of leads through things like a strategic quiz, podcast focused lead magnets, optimizing the website. Literally all of these things consistently bring in warm, qualified leads. And they're things that can be running all the time, no matter what else you have going on in your business. That means that they're constantly bringing in qualified leads. Whenever you have them running, it can be consistently in the background. You can do a promo with them. That kind of growth doesn't happen because of a lucky break, by the way. It happens because you start to connect the dots between your content, your business goals, and your podcast. Okay. All right. So we're going to start to shift our mindset around that, right? When we are focusing on monetization, bring it in-house. Start to focus on the possibilities that you could see by monetizing your podcast with your offers. That's what gets me so excited. That is what I light up with my clients when they start to see that come to fruition, when we start to track our conversion rate and we start to track the podcast revenue. It's all tied to this. And it's so exciting and so refreshing. And all of a sudden you go, okay, downloads might not be as important because I'm starting to see the revenue driven from my podcast into my business. Okay, so here we are. Clearly, what I'm sharing, what I'm talking about is that your podcast, every episode, it needs to lead somewhere. Every episode needs to act like a door, inviting your listeners in and inviting them to take the next step. And that next step might be some sort of lead gen, some sort of nurture sequence, a quiz, a DM conversation, scheduling a call. But here's the thing. If you don't guide them, they won't go, right? People are coming to you every single week. They're listening to your podcast. They're falling in love with you, falling in love with how you teach or what you share. But if you're not asking them to go on the journey with you and to take that next step, of course, they're not going to take it. Like you have to ask, you have to get into a consistent routine of asking. Most podcasters are amazing at giving value, like amazing, but they stop there. And here's the secret. If you want to drive revenue through your podcast, you need to start asking. You need to start thinking, where do I want my listeners to go next? And then build your episode with that in mind. Where do I want my listeners to go next? What is their next step? And then build your podcast out with that in mind. Okay. So the last thing, I truly believe that when we start to shift our mindset, these shifts become visible and they show up in what you do and how you show up for your podcast and how you show up for your audience. So once you start treating your podcast like a product within your business instead of just a piece of content to serve and nurture, you plan out episodes that align with your offers. And it becomes very seamless to guide your audience and your listeners to that offer. You start to bake in calls to action that actually convert. You start to track what actually matters. And you start to repurpose intentionally, meaning every clip, every caption, every newsletter ties back to your funnel. And you're squeezing more juice out of all of the effort that you're putting in. So I want to be clear that this isn't about adding more to your plate. That is not what this is about. It's about getting more of what you're already creating. Like you're already creating your podcast episodes. You already have the systems in place. We're just squeezing more juice out of those. Okay. So if you're with me every week in and out, thank you for being here. You know that I love to give tangible, actionable steps. And although this is a mindset episode, I still want to share some really tangible places to start. So first things first, I want you to spend some time looking through your top performing episodes and asking yourself, is there some sort of dynamic ad that I can add in these that drives people naturally to my email list? So make it feel natural. Don't do just something generic that's like across all of your episodes. Can you really start to focus on what is one thing that I can create for this episode that takes this person one step further? So it's not just like a checklist of everything that we already went over. It's one step further. It's something unique. The next thing that I want to encourage you to do is choose just one pathway from your podcast to your email list. Maybe it's a quiz. Maybe it is a free audio training, and then make it the focus and drive them to an offer from that. So when they get onto your email list, don't leave them hanging. Don't let them just fall into your master email subscriber list. Put them in a nurture sequence that leads to an offer. After they go through that nurture sequence, hopefully it's set up in a way that's converting for you. If not, let's talk. You can book a discovery call with me and we can talk all about how to set that up. But on the other side of the nurture sequence, if they happen to not purchase something, or even if they do, then they fall into the master subscriber email list where you consistently nurture them on a weekly basis. But first and foremost, they have to go through a nurture sequence that leads to an offer. Okay. And then the last thing is I want you to map out the next 4 episodes to align with something that you're selling or building. So think of them like stepping stones towards your offer. So they can be something that's related, but kind of sets your ideal customer and your listener. It gives them the tools that they need to go from where they are to be ready to purchase whatever you're selling. So be thinking about that. That's how you can craft your next episodes to support that. And then, of course, because these topics are so closely related and aligned with your offer, for you to bake in something that's like, hey, by the way, like I just did, right? I just invited those of you who are feeling like you want to set up a nurture sequence that actually sells. So you want people to go from your podcast to your nurture sequence to an offer, and you want to make sure it's converting. And I just literally said, if you want to build that out in your business, book a discovery call with me. Like that is because I'm sharing exactly what aligns with my offer, how I support and help female podcasters, right? So that's what you want to be thinking. And when you are recording those things, let the offer naturally come up. I'm all for dynamic ads. I love dynamic ads. So you can also insert dynamic ads when you have that promo open. But if you can bake them in there, especially if they're evergreen, golden. And one thing I want to say, if it is evergreen, and so if you bake something in that's not evergreen, say that the door is closed or you have a shorter selling window for that product or whatever it is, that's okay. Just make sure that you redirect that page that you're mentioning somewhere that's fruitful for them, right? Whether it's get on a wait list, get on my specific newsletter, or something. You can even, get on my email list or whatever. And then you pour them into a nurture sequence that leads to an offer, right? Oh, another fun thing you could do is where it directs them to a page that says the doors are currently closed. However, I created this bundle for you. You can check it out. And then what you do is you put together 3 to 5 podcast episodes that could really serve this person where they are. and get them on your email list, move them through the nurture sequence into an offer that's maybe a smaller offer that's evergreen. See where this is going? So this is how you go from just like showing up to showing up with purpose. It's how we move from just content creation to real business growth. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with this. When you treat your podcast like a business asset, it actually becomes one, right? You don't need to do this big elaborate thing to get more followers or get fancier gear. You need to believe that your podcast deserves to be part of your revenue ecosystem and then start treating it accordingly. All right. So thank you so much for being here today. This was a really fun episode. It's a little different than what I've done. As you can see, I want to just pull back the curtain a little more, be a little more transparent. And this mindset piece has been one that's just been coming up for me and has been on my heart. So I hope it served you well. If you were listening and you were like, yeah, but I don't know how to exactly do that, jump on a call with me. You can go to podcastmarketinghub.com/call. We can just hash out the details of your goals and see how I can support you in making that come to fruition and really turning podcast listeners into paying customers. As always, I'm so grateful you're here. Please share, leave a review, all that good stuff. And then I will see you next time.